I'd like to call to order the February 6th meeting of New Canaan Board of Education. The first item on our agenda is the approval of our minutes from our January 27th meeting. They are in front of you in your packet. If I could have you take a look, and if I could get someone to approve. Ms. West. Second. Sangeeta. Okay, all those in favor? So it would be, let's see, I'm trying to think. It was a funny meeting. Okay, yes, we have a majority of the quorum. Great, thank you. Okay, moving on, you have the agenda in front of you. If I could get a motion to approve this evening's agenda? Hazel, second. Brendan? All those in favor? Okay. All right, moving on to comments from the public. To ensure the public's right to be heard, the board has set aside time during the meeting for public comments. 2 minutes will be allotted to each speaker and a maximum of 15 minutes to each subject. Do I have anyone wishing to address the board this evening? Seeing none, we will move on to reports and recognition. The first item on our reports and recognition is the Connecticut Engineering Education Association Teacher of the Year Award for Mr. James Zambrano. And we have here this evening Mr. William McDonough.
Yes.
From CTEEA. Okay,
and if I could say a word of introduction as Bill and Jim come up to the podium here. It's nice to take a moment to use some time for recognition. We call it reports and recognition, but we generally have reports in that category of our agenda each night. So tonight we have something a little different with some recognition. Bill McDonough is here from the Connecticut Technology and Engineering Education Association. Bill is in his 3rd year as the president of the CTEEA, right? Bill's also a 25-year veteran teacher who started off his career actually as a mathematics teacher. As a mathematics teacher, he started to see the excitement shown by students for their work in technology and engineering education. Bill therefore became a certified technology education teacher. Aside from teaching robotics, electronic game design, and engineering, as I mentioned, Bill is the president of the Connecticut Technology and Engineering Education Association. As a matter of fact, Bill and I were just talking out in the hallway. He shared with me that after the presentation tonight, he's on his way back to Massac, where he coaches the robotics team. He has a group of students working there now. So I guess I'm curious to know if your team actually competes against Jim's team, because Jim is equally involved here in the New Canaan robotics team. And if so, perhaps you should linger a bit while your team is practicing. But
Jim's son is on my team.
Oh.
Excellent. So it's very difficult. So he's split.
He is. We ordered team shirts, and our team shirts were black and red, but I couldn't put the team logo on it because he wanted to be able to wear it here without causing a problem with his students at New Canaan.
Well done.
So we share colors. So, but no, I'm the president of the CTEEA. I represent the roughly 870 tech ed teachers across the state of Connecticut from middle school to high school. Our goal as an association is to promote technology education, computer science, and STEM learning to all levels of education in every town across the state. We award a middle school teacher of the year, a high school teacher of the year, a middle school program of the year, and a high school program of the year every year in recognition of outstanding service to tech ed, STEM education, and their communities. This year, I actually nominated Jim Zambrano for this award for his work that he's done not only within our association, but within TSA, within VEX, with his associations with CCSU and their certification program, taking student teachers. He is an exemplary model of what we're looking for in terms of a tech ed leader across the state of Connecticut. And it is my pleasure to be here and recognize Jim Zambrano as our Teacher of the Year. He will be recognized at the ITEEA National Conference in Dallas, Texas in March. There is a full ceremony, press release, the whole works with that. He is one of 50 Teachers of the Year that are being recognized this year by the International Technology, Engineering, and Education Association. So with that, congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
if you know Jim, he's been our department chair in our CTE program for a number of years. I was sharing a story with Bill out in the hallway about him when I was high school principal, and we saw the momentum for computer science, for students to want to take coding classes and be more involved. We didn't have a specific class around that, so Jim and I talked about what it might mean to try to do that. And I looked him in the eye and said, we don't have anyone to teach it. And he looked me right back and said, I can. And jumped right in, spent that summer learning how to do it, piecing it together, and helping to build the program. We talk often about Project Lead the Way. Even in our goals, we talk about STEM education, engineering, those pieces, and we're very proud of our Project Lead the Way program. Jim has been instrumental in all of that, really brought it to us, and has been the point person in that program for years and years. So he's one of those faculty members who will just help solve problems and get things done, and certainly deserving of this recognition and award. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you. On behalf of the board, we'd like to congratulate you on this award, and also having a child who's had you as an educator. I am so thrilled to see you get this recognition. So deserved. So thank you. Anyone else like to? Okay. All right. Thank you, and feel free to leave at your whenever it is convenient for you.
But not before Mike takes your picture.
Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay. All right, moving on to the action item section of our agenda. The first item is the East PTC donation. You should have all received some information about this donation in your Friday notes, and if I could get a motion to approve the donation from East PTC in the amount of $9,045.32 for the purchase of sensory resources, general education classroom equipment that supports sensory needs of students, cube chairs, neo-rock, stools, standing desks, etc. Could I get a motion to approve that donation? Sangeeta. So moved. Could I get a second? Hazel. Could any yeah, could I if there's any discussion, and Chris, if you'd like to come address the board.
So just want to acknowledge our PTC and also the board to thank them for support of this donation. This, to give you some history, is a donation that actually started to be thought about last year, where we had teachers in our classrooms who were using some of this equipment with students who maybe had special education needs, Section 504 plans that required some of this equipment to help them access learning in the classroom. And we had teachers who were noticing the impact that this equipment had on all students in the classroom. And decided that they wanted to have more of it in their classrooms. And when we spoke with parents, many of them were seeing the need for students to have resources in the classroom that met sensory needs that their students had, that allowed their students to have more flexible seating, more movement in the classroom. So this fall, we had a committee that was led by our occupational therapist, Stephanie Bellino, and a group of teachers from across the grade levels who met, and they really started researching the sensory needs of students and the needs for movement in classroom, flexible seating, as I mentioned, what are called fidgets, which are tools that you might hold in your hand. And I think all of us have different learning preferences, but you probably know someone who, when they're sitting and really thinking, they might have something in their hand that they're moving with. And that actually allows them to focus and really access the information that's being shared. And the committee decided then to share with our full faculty what they were reading in the research and what types of equipment they were trying out in their classrooms through the support of our occupational therapist. And from there, the faculty met in December. We came up with a list of what all teachers felt would be helpful to have in the classroom for all students. And in some ways, it was to normalize this equipment, but in many ways, it was simply to have it available to all students so that it wasn't about having a disability. It was more recognizing that this is about learning preferences and learning styles, and that all students have different learning preferences and learning styles. So we wanted all of them to have the opportunity to have access to this equipment and these resources. From there, our PTC had done a wonderful job at our fall fair. Thanks to the support of our parents and families at East School, they were very supportive of this work, so have come forward with the donation. What we plan to do with the approval of this donation is to now move forward not only in ordering the materials, but also having another faculty meeting where our occupational therapist will work with staff in terms of implementation, helping to have conversations about how do we help all students understand the expectations of the use of this equipment, that it's a learning tool in classrooms. We're also going to have what's called a sensory library. So there'll be some equipment that is in all classrooms, and then a set of equipment that is housed centrally, and teachers can use it as they need in their classroom, or as they want to integrate more and more into their classrooms. And we also are planning a PTC meeting in March where our occupational therapist and some classroom teachers who have been integrating resources into the classroom and have done much of this research are going to be sharing with parents what the equipment is that we're bringing into classrooms, how it's being used, and share some examples of that with parents, so parents have an understanding of the why, the what, and the how with this. So we're very excited and appreciate the support of the board as well.
Thank you. Is there anyone who has any questions or comments or for discussion? Well, Maria, sorry.
Is it kind of like an intervention? Will it be by student, or is it just equipment in the room that students will recognize that if they need to move or something, they can use it?
We've been trialing it in certain classrooms already because we have some in the school through our occupational therapist. And what we have found is that teachers introduce it. Typically, all students try out the equipment, and it really is about preference. So there are some students who, a neo-rock stool, for you to know, and some of our East School students who are here can speak to it. He's giving it the thumbs up.
I'm seeing thumbs up in the audience.
It's their stools that come in different heights. They have a skid-proof bottom that allows it to wobble. So a student can sit on the stool but still be moving without disrupting others and have that input coming to them. There are some students who really appreciate that and find that to be very satisfying as they're sitting. It allows them that need to move. There are other students who that's a little disconcerting to them when they sit on that stool and rock like that. They actually would prefer their seat, a typical seat. So what we have found is that we introduce it, all have access. Some teachers set up a rotation for students to try it out, and then it becomes sort of based on students who feel they need that tool in the classroom. So I wouldn't call it so much an intervention as a preference. And teachers now will have more flexibility with equipment in their classroom to offer students the resources that fit their preference.
Anyone else? Sangeeta?
No, I'm so thankful that you're putting this in, because I know this is new research has come out to show that this really does help some students be able to perform better in the classroom, and we always want to do things that are best for our students. And I'm appreciative for the PTC to be able to donate it so we can get it going right away. So it's a wonderful thing. Thank you.
Anyone else? Penny?
I think this is a terrific donation. I guess I was just going to make a request. We've had some wonderful furniture at the cafeteria that's been brought into West School, and a lot of amazing, generous donations from parents. And if in Friday notes or a presentation or whatever, or just a clip, it'd be fun to see it in action sometime, if that's possible. I don't want to burden anybody with it, but if it's easy, it would be great to see after it all kind of shakes out how it's actually going.
As I mentioned, when we have our PTC meeting, we certainly are hoping at that point to have some photos of how it's being used in the classroom and can share those.
Penny, it sounds to me like you're looking for some stools maybe at the board tables.
I wanted best practices on how to get us to perform
standing down.
at our optimum.
But we do have our PTC presidents. I just want to thank them. Colleen Proster and Ann Dunn, and Kaylin and Aiden Proster are here as well in support of our donations. So,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you. I would just ask that maybe if you could forward the date of your PTC meeting, because I think maybe a few of us. I would be personally interested to hear the research that your staff has put together and your parent group, because I think we have been hearing about this and there are many initiatives throughout the district. So I think it would be good for us to hear if we have the opportunity to. So thank you. Thank you to all the parents who and members of East School who so generously donated to this cause, so thank you. Thank you. Okay. All right, so I have a motion and a second on the floor. If all those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. All right, moving on to the next item on our agenda is the Board of Education Policy Series 1000. It would be a first read. If I could get a motion to approve as a first read the updated policies Community Relations Series 1000. Sherry. Second, Brendan. Okay, is there any discussion? You should have all received in your Friday notes a packet of information. I'm going to have Tom give a little introduction as the chair of the governance committee.
Yeah, what I thought I'd do is provide a quick review as to the process that allowed us to get to this point. So real quick, in late November, the governance committee, after a series of meetings, completed this a first edit, which we call a red ink edit, of Series 1000 Community Relations, and we sent that off to our consultants at CABE. And then CABE returned that edit to the committee in mid-December. The committee then forwarded that document, that cleaned-up document, to the board, and we invited all the board members to meet on the 18th of January to review that first round edit. And we made some significant changes in that review meeting. And after we completed that edit, we forwarded a copy again to CABE. And they returned that copy in this format to us as a first read. So we'll have another opportunity after the first read today to make additional edits. I'll make an attempt to schedule that meeting between now and Monday, which is the intended date of our second read. And also, as a recommendation of several board members, I'm going to provide a summary page to this edit, particularly pointing out what policies have been moved out of the series, because that's something that we've asked CABE to do. In their quick turnaround, they weren't able to do it. But if there was a policy in the 1000s that was moved, it's not quite evident to you as to where it might show up later in the process. We're going to make an effort to provide that in the summary page, that information.
Okay, are there any other questions? So we'll have time between this read and the second read. Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to the statement of accounts with Dr. Keating.
Alrighty, thank you very much. This is the first month that we're going to be doing transfers before the board for this current fiscal year. And the reason being is that midway through the year, we do a reforecast as we prepare for our 2018 budget. So before you see all of the reforecasted accounts that align with the budget document for 2018. So I wanted to walk you through the changes and the differences to our original budget so they have good context as to why the transfers are taking place. Our budget is $86.2 million, and our salary account is 54.9 of that $86.2 million. Last year when we did the reforecast, you may recall, we had forecasted and anticipated a decrease in the salary account of $1.4 million. And as we explained that we were forecasting out for 2017 based on our position control in Munis, and we did. And so you can see this year in the budget reforecast, our numbers align much closer. In fact, we're anticipating approximately $290,000 more in the salary account. Now, having said that, about 50% of that $290,000 relates to the fact that we're grossing up the stipend account. In the budget, when we prepared it for 2017, we had netted out the stipends that are donated by the All Sports Booster Club. And so for this budget process, we felt it was appropriate and necessary, because we've added a new schedule to our 2018 budget for sports, to gross up the stipend account. The other half of the budget really relates to some new needs that we've had. In particular, we have increased needs in special ed drivers and also in the OTPT accounts. And we've added some staffing for the internship program. So you'll see those changes as you look through the detail of the salary accounts, and they do attribute to the balance of the reforecast. Moving on to employee benefits, we do expect to spend $22,000 less than the budget, and that's a combination of a few things. We expect to spend more in payroll taxes, and that's a function of just our reforecast in the salary accounts. But we also expect to have a decrease in workers' comp. In fact, we will have a decrease because our premiums have been reduced in workers' comp, in retirement supplement, and due to the renegotiation with our custodians, we no longer have a benefit of approximately $19,000 that previously went to them. One of the things that we wanted to mention to you tonight is that we have in our original budget $12,090,000 going into the Internal Services Fund. That's a flat budget that we will put into that account regardless of what we expect in claims. And as we've talked through the budget process, we've shared with you that our claims have improved over our original budget by a substantial amount of money. So while we're continuing to put in our original budget, we do expect to have a balance in the Internal Services Fund, which has actually given us flexibility moving forward to 2018. And tomorrow night with the joint boards, we'll be discussing, the parameters around that, and Joe Spurgeon will be available to help us describe, the factors that went into that calculation or those calculations. Moving on to contracted services, we do expect to have an increase of $87,000 in that account, and it's primarily related to two items. One is an increase in occupational therapy requirements, and the other is an increase in the special education transportation cost. We've had decreases in legal fees and a number of other services within that category, which has substantially reduced what could have been a much higher number. One of the things you're going to see in the financial report is that we will be accessing some of the excess cost grant that goes directly to the town, almost $300,000, and this is one of the primary areas that it needs to offset, which is the OTPT. Property services, the decrease is just a little bit over $3,000, but again, there is movement within that account as well. We expect to have a decrease in electricity and heating, but we also expect to have increases in other areas of the budget as well, software being one of them. Just so that you know, the software account is comprised of a number of different subscriptions, which total $49,000, but there is quite a few. Many of them have to do with additional support for PowerSchool that were put on enterprise management, a learning subscription, but also additional web filter software, firewall software, and antivirus software. With regards to supplies and equipment, we do have an increase anticipated in that account of almost $29,000, and it's primarily for instructional classroom supplies and library supplies that have gone up across the district. And then when it comes to the fees, we have shown the donations. We're referring to that as support, other support. And it's the combination of both hockey and the All Sports Booster Club is $158,000 that offsets our expense. And we're going to be showing that as a revenue source. So that's transparent. And the reforecast for all the other revenues that we've added into the budget this year is increasing by $20,000, and that is really related to the Turkey Bowl. So next year we won't have the Turkey Bowl, so we won't have that revenue, but on every off year we will have the benefit of those revenues coming in. And then finally, we are going to be requesting $282,799 as it sits right now in our forecast out of the excess cost grant. And you may recall in the past, we've grossed up those expenditures in special ed at budget time with the understanding that if we had a shortfall in those accounts, that we'd be able to go back to the town and request those funds. And as it would be this year, we're going to be doing that. Last year we did not. This year we will need to do that. And it's based on needs and things that arose after we adopted our budget last year. That's it.
Okay. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions on the statement of accounts from today?
I'd just like to share, before the board does vote on the transfers that are in the statement of accounts, that Joanne uses the word reforecast. And just to share the amazing amount of great work that goes into actually creating the reforecast. It's really going line by line through our budget to look to see what our costs have been, to anticipate upcoming costs throughout the rest of the year, and really to work very actively with the budget as the document to drive our values and our goals and our mission as we talk about. In creating the new budget, the reforecast gives us much more accurate numbers to build off of. And that's why in the budget document itself, we compare against the projected spending, not the budgeted spending. Because the budgeted spending is based on where we thought we would be, a year ago as we built the budget. But the projected really gives us the actuals up till that point, so up till December, in each of the lines. And then Joanne and her staff work to determine what those projected costs are likely to be going forward. That's not to mean there won't be some changes as we go through. Of course, things change. That's an important dimension of running and managing a school district budget. But these more accurate numbers allow us to create, I think, a much better, more accurate budget going forward when we consider the 17-18 budget. And I also just want to quickly share the excess cost grant that we talked about. That, I'm sure many of you remember the budget where we grossed up that amount by that $600,000 or so. And it's really turned out to be a very positive partnership with the town, where it's simply a call to the first selectman, a quick conversation, and he's fully committed to whatever we need in order to make us whole on those special education costs. So just want to share with the Board of Ed that that's just an example of some very positive cooperation between the Board of Education and the first selectman around this. So I think it's worked very well.
Okay. All right, go ahead, Sherry.
So just two quick questions. One is, I'm assuming the Resources Committee continues the process of reviewing the statement of accounts prior to presenting it. I just think it's always helpful to mention that there is a board committee looking at that. And then just a question on the grossing up of the all boosters stipends. So I guess my question is, why is there that difference? I mean, do the all boosters intend to cover the full amount, or, so.
It's the amount that they have provided in the past, and we're assuming that they're going to continue to provide that support, level of support. There's no indication that they're not going to.
So by sort of including that, right, so putting the true cost of the program into the budget and then including that revenue, it allows us to accurately really develop and talk about the cost of the program. Without that, for, say, our athletics program, we would know what the budget was internally in our operating, but we wouldn't truly know what it takes to run that program specifically. So it works well that way. It also, a couple of years ago, we began all of those what are called volunteer coaches, but they're paid through the Booster Club instead of through our budget. Gary and HR began screening and vetting every one of those folks. So they do run through our budget, and as part of that process, here's the background check that we use, and the fingerprinting and everything else for everybody that's hired through this. So since they really are, the funding comes from a different source, but they by pretty much all measures they're employees of our district in that way. We felt it was a more accurate way to represent those costs in the budget.
So can I just try my question a different way, because I just want to make sure I understand. So do we develop the budget in conjunction with the All Sports Boosters Club, so as our costs move, that's communicated, and they're budgeting, and we're budgeting and they're budgeting the same number?
Right.
Yeah, this was after some meetings with Jay. Jay Egan's with certainly the money that for ice hockey has been consistent for a number of years because of the ice time and that donation. And there may be some slight variation year by year based on coaching needs. Maybe they'll need one less in the fall, maybe two more in the winter, however that goes. And then we would just reflect that at the end of the year, as we expense it out. But Jay, this is done in consultation with Jay, who is in constant communication with the All Sports Booster Club about our needs and the programs and their generosity and donations. So, yeah.
Hazel?
Could I just bring up a topic that has been in the newspapers and has also been communicated, I think, to every voter in New Canaan through their representatives, but maybe we should make the audience aware that we're aware of this situation about what the governor is recommending to do with the budgets of the school, with the various towns. Would you want to comment on that?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be glad to. What Hazel's referring to is recently Governor Malloy, in anticipation of his budget being released in the next couple of days, has been issuing some press releases about some ideas that he's building into the budget. Some of them strike us as positive in some ways, such as he's talking about mandate relief, so looking at some different mandates that have been on the table for schools for a while, and looking to provide some budgetary relief through that. Others are certainly cause us to pause. Some of the suggestions or some of the things that have been released in through these press releases are ideas such as asking municipalities to share the burden of the teachers' retirement board payments. So asking where it was supposed to be funded by the state, fully funded, it hasn't been. I think I heard in his State of the State address that it hadn't been fully funded in 80 years. So now they're looking to fully fund this and looking for the municipalities to pick up about a third of that cost. As we look at, essentially they're looking at 10% of the certified staff lines is what I've been reading. Again, this is through press releases and preliminary to the budget, but that for us in New Canaan would equate to about $4.2 million. Just today, another press release came out that was that mentioned looking at the ECS formula and looking to change the ECS formula. That's the educational cost sharing grant that goes and it's received by the town, and looking to recalculate that in order to redistribute the money in the state differently. And there was even something that was sent around today about looking at the excess cost grant formula and looking to scale that based on need, and to some degree. So as you know, the excess cost formula right now is if a high needs student costs more than 4.5 times our per pupil expenditure, then we submit those costs to the state, and then in the spring of that same year, there's a reimbursement back for a percentage of those costs. And generally, it's been between 70-75% in the last number of years. And regardless of what district you're in, it's the same percentage of that cost. So one of the, again, today in a press release, he mentioned looking at that formula and looking at how those excess costs are covered and having some type of a scale for need. All of these things are they're sort of coming out one piece at a time from Hartford, from the governor's office. And in the next couple of days, he'll have this budget presented. And after that, I'm sure there'll be lots and lots of conversation with the governor, the legislature, and everybody. These are ideas I think that he's putting out. Certainly, it's important to pay attention, to know what's happening, and I believe we are. We've been in contact with our legislators here locally and statewide, both by attending legislative breakfasts and actually email and different conversations and meetings, what have you. So we are staying sort of plugged into what's happening there. Once he does come out with the proposal, then it would have to be approved certainly by the legislature, by everybody else. So it would be a long process, and as you can imagine, CAPS, the Connecticut Association of Public School Superintendents, and CABE, the Connecticut Association of Boards of Education, have been also following this along and issuing some white papers and some feedback about some of these proposals. Certainly from the first selectmen and the municipalities, they see it as, again, it's a shifting of the burden of the costs, and it really equates to a tax, right? So you maybe not calling it a tax, but essentially passing it on to the municipalities in that way. Much of the feedback I'm hearing is essentially asking for it, just another tax. So it's something that we have to watch. I know that in recent negotiations, the governor had agreed to work to balance or to fully fund the TRB, the Teachers Retirement Board, and then sort of in exchange, there were some concessions, I believe, from the unions there. So I think this is one of the ways that he's looking to do that. It's going to make for a very interesting budget season for us as we go to the Town Council and Board of Finance tomorrow evening. But again, it's important to watch and to know what's happening and to sort of consider alternatives, but also important to have a measured response in that this is part of a process, and there are many people who weigh in on the proposals and the budget as it goes forward prior to being adopted or not, or changed by, by the legislature. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Any other questions? I just wanted to sort of piggyback off what you just said. So, I know that we've been in touch with the legislators, and I had a brief interaction with a few of our legislators over the weekend, and I think it's important to say nothing has been decided yet. Nobody's voted on anything yet, and so if there are members of the community, I think it would be helpful for people to communicate their thoughts on the governor's proposals to their legislators, because really no voting has been done on this. Nothing is going to happen until the legislature votes on the budget. But we're in a big hole in this area, in a lot of areas in Connecticut. So we need to voice our opinion. Did somebody over here have a question or comment?
Just when we get back to the transfer side of the question.
Okay.
But
Well,
let's
we can
finish with this
Is
now.
there any? I doubt is there any other question or comment? Okay. So Penny, why don't we can go back to transfers? Do you have a question?
So you might have mentioned it and I missed it, but there are a number of transfers, kind of pluses and minuses. They seem to sort of net out on the custodians and maintenance. And can you just explain again what those, we got 77,000 added on in custodians and maintenance, and then 125,000 custodial maintenance.
Sure.
And then we're taking 240,000 out of facility specialists. So I was wondering what all that was.
One of the things that Bob did with his budget this year was he basically restructured his account coding. He had 5 or 6 different accounts that kind of were, the lines between them were blurry, so to speak. They could go in one account or the other. And so what he did was he narrowed it down to 3 accounts. And he moved the money out of, primarily out of specialists, facility specialists, into other accounts. One of the big items he had in facility specialists was his custodial supplies. And so for reporting purposes, as we discovered as we went through the books this past year in the close, that really belongs in a supply account, not in a facility specialist account, which is purchase services. So it's basically with some housekeeping within his accounts. The other thing on the salary side with facilities is that we've had a lot of workers' comps this year. And so we've incurred a lot of overtime. The OT count went up by 125,000. So some of those funds are coming out of the salary account because we receive reimbursement from our carrier. So that's where you see some shifts between those accounts.
Okay.
Any other questions? Sangeeta?
It's not so much a question, but just an acknowledgement again of, what Dr. Letzi was mentioning with the cooperation between Joanne and Dr. Letzi and the rest of the administration staff, in terms of the excess cost grant and figuring all that out with the town. And we're all working together to have that transparency where it's more understandable and it's become very streamlined, because I know it's been difficult throughout the years, and the fact that we've come so far and to a point where, now it's just a great, cooperation between the two groups is wonderful. So I just want to acknowledge and appreciate, because I know it's been a lot of work behind the scenes for that from everybody. Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, so if I could get,
The only question
oh,
Are there
yeah,
any
Penny.
surprises here that you think would relate to our, budget for looking forward for the 2017? Any changes in the educational materials, things where we had to move more quickly than we thought we would have to move? So sort of something that would educate us as a board as to where we should kind of inquire more deeply as we're going through the budget process.
I can offer something on that. And I don't know if it's just a matter of operations, but some of the things that take place, and you can see some of the variances here, deal with our ability to, let's say, hire somebody like a speech and language person, where that was a goal of ours this year, to bring that from a contracted services in-house, but we weren't able to do that. We still have that same goal moving into next year, because it's a cost-effective way to provide the service. But you have to be able to find the right combination of staffing to make that happen. So those are the kind of things that we have to understand are going to happen from budget year to budget year, and we just need to be flexible with that in terms of how we transfer money within accounts to basically achieve the same thing.
Okay.
Anyone else? Okay, so if I could get a motion to approve the current period transfers as presented in the statement of accounts? Tom, second. Jen? All those in favor? It's unanimous. Okay. Moving on to the consent agenda. This is a very sad consent agenda.
No.
Wow. An end of an era in New Canaan Public Schools. I have to announce this one just because I don't usually read the entire consent agenda, but tonight's consent agenda asks us to move to note and record the retirement of Glenda Green, the K through 4 Language Arts Coordinator, effective June 30th, 2017. For any of those of us who have seen all the amazing work she has done with our kids and their reading and getting our kids excited to read. This is a huge loss to the district, so.
It is, and I'm already thinking about how best to celebrate her career at our June meeting when we get to talk about our retirees a little. But you should know, Glenda has already volunteered to come before the board and to present whatever we would like prior to her departure. And there's a lot that she has to say. Glenda's, we're going to really miss her. She's done amazing work for us and has been in the district for quite some time. As a matter of fact, Dr. Carenti has a little bit of background even, I think.
Sure. Glenda started her career at East as a librarian in 1989. And Glenda, at that time, the library was on the second floor, and it was 2 classrooms that they used as the library. And her best friend was down the hallway, which was Bunny Potts, who was a 3rd grade teacher at the time. And then Bunny decided to go back and get her administrative degree, and Glenda went back and got her reading degree, and thus there's the story of the 2 of them who have moved into different positions in the district. So Glenda, I know, will certainly share her gratitude with the Board of Education and how supportive you've been to the reading program here in New Canaan over the years, and how supportive you've been of Glenda and all the work that she's done. So I know that she wanted to make sure that all of you are aware of that. She's going to be greatly missed, but we can certainly find ways to bring Glenda to do presentations, to talk about books on your nightstands, or about basset hounds, or anything that you'd like to hear about. So.
Okay. So if we don't approve it, can she not retire? Okay. So could I get a motion to approve the consent agenda? Brendan, second. Hazel. All those in favor? Okay. All right, it's unanimous. Moving on to announcements and future business, Dr. Letzi.
Sure. Our next meeting is a week from tonight due to the February break and sort of the pace of things. So at that meeting, if we are ready, we'll be looking at the Series 1000 for a second read. As I mentioned before, when the board went through the Series 9000, this is it's the board's schedule and the board's process, so please don't feel rushed. But that is tentatively on the agenda for that evening. And additionally, another executive session for some confidential documents from our attorney would be on there, something that Attorney Bellick and I have been talking about. I mentioned that our next step in the budget process is tomorrow night, and that's the combined Board of Finance and Town Council. We also have Joe Spurgeon, our insurance consultant, coming to that meeting to provide some more detail about the budgeting around insurance, because I know that's an important item for everybody. And then a week or so later, we have our follow-up meeting and conversation with them as well. So I do also want to just, while I have the opportunity, to encourage people, if they'd like to learn more about our budget, to go to our district website. And actually now there's a link on each of our building websites as well to go to the budget page. In that you'll find the whole document that is all tabbed and linked and very well put together, and also the schedule of different meetings. But anyone who wants to learn more about the budget and what it takes to run the New Canaan Public Schools financially, it's all right in there. And I certainly invite you to take a look. I think it's an excellent resource for anyone who would like to learn more. Thank you.
Okay.
And just for people who are interested, do you know what time the Board Ed presentation will be tomorrow night?
The meeting starts at 7, and I believe we are
Third.
third. I was going to say the main attraction.
We're third. Major.
So, yeah, generally, it's a relatively short agenda prior to us coming on. It will be a longer presentation because it's an opportunity for us to give the large overview of the budget. Not very much question and answer tomorrow night, but it's an opportunity for us to really to help the town bodies to understand sort of the budget priorities that are reflected in our proposal. So.
All right. Moving on, does anyone like to address the board in their comments from the public? Seeing none, we'll move on. If I could get a motion to adjourn to executive session in accordance with Connecticut General Statutes 1-225, the subject to be discussed is negotiations. Sherry, second. Sangeeta, all those in favor? Okay.